What is up, Netflix fans, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about the horror genre and 5 horror movies on Netflix right now that you should watch. Now, these are not necessarily Netflix originals. They are not necessarily big budgeted movies. These are just 5 films that I noticed, hey, these are on Netflix. If you're a horror fan or you just like scary things, these are movies that you should watch if you haven't. And if you have watched them, this is my way of telling you guys they're on Netflix right now. And if you want to see it again, you have the opportunity, if you have Netflix. And also, before we get started, I wanted to point this out. I live in the United States, so all of the releases that I'm talking about are United States. Not necessarily United States only, but they are in the United States, but that doesn't mean that they will be in other countries. So I want to say, if you are in another country and these films are not on Netflix, I am so sorry. I apologize. I am working on a way to incorporate that a bit better because it's something I was a bit more ignorant on in my last video, but I'm going to try my best to make that work for you guys. Thank you for sitting through this video regardless. And I started this thing a few weeks ago, and I made it the 5 movies to watch in February, and my plan was to make it February, March, April, May, and then a bunch of people were in my comment section saying, Austin, just separate it by genre, 5 horror movies to watch, 5 action movies to watch. So you know what? I'm going to take your all's advice, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do action movies and comedies and adventures and fantasies and sci-fi. But I figured the perfect place to start is kind of what Netflix is known for when you're talking about how they push out original movies. It feels like once a month I'm watching a Netflix original horror film. But like I said, this is not Netflix original talk. This is just 5 movies that I think you guys should check out that are in the horror genre. Now, some of them might be Netflix originals, and our first one that we're talking about may in fact be that. Because the first one is probably the least obscure of all of these films, and that is Hush. I had so many people in my comment section telling me, Austin, have you seen Hush? Review Hush. Yes, I have seen Hush. It is one of Netflix's first original movies, and this is a great film. It's about a deaf writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life, and she must fight for her life in silence when a masked killer appears at her window. So there's your premise. This movie runs at a very smooth 1 hour and 20-minute runtime, so if you're looking for something shorter, I recommend this, and it's just a very easy, albeit slightly intense watch. It is a horror film. It's not like bloody body horror, but it is a very interesting movie. Like I said, this is a deaf main character, and following her through all of these circumstances and everything that is happening with this man who has come to her house clearly to do something bad. Things are happening around her, and a lot of the movie is silent. Now, it's not like A Quiet Place silent, where the majority of the film, there is really no noise except for the ambient noises in the background. There is more in this film than there was in that film, but it's still a movie in that vein. And that's one of the reasons why I find this such an interesting horror film. Because it's not your typical, oh, this man's possessed by the demon, we gotta do something. And as much as I love The Conjuring, which is also on Netflix, that is a film that pretty much everyone has watched or at least has heard of. Hush is a movie, and I still know people who have Netflix and have had Netflix for a long time that haven't watched this film. This is a film that I think if you're a horror fan, you should watch. If you like good acting and solid directing, Mike Flanagan, our guy from Haunting of Hill House, and maybe he directed another movie that's going to be on this list. He brings this element that you saw begin to spark in 2016. I believe it was one of his first films, Hush was, and then he goes on to do bigger and clearly better things with Haunting of Hill House. And I'm not saying Hush is the best horror film I've ever seen. It's just something that I would definitely recommend if you like the genre, and it's a really good movie on Netflix. My next movie we're going to talk about is a film called Green Room. So a punk rock band is forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar. This one could be considered more of a thriller than a horror film, but there are horrific elements, and we start with the performance of Patrick Stewart. Sorry, I tend to do that, but he is in this film, and he gives one of the best performances I saw from that year. How he was overlooked for any kind of awards talk, and he may have gotten some smaller awards, but he's so good in this movie, guys. And Green Room was one of those movies, it comes out of nowhere, and it just kind of grabs you by the throat and never lets you go. This cast is also really good. Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, my friend. He is a man who will be missed. I love this man, from Star Trek to Thoroughbreds last year to Green Room. Green Room is a great performance. He was a great actor. He went far too young. We are going to miss him, but he gives a great performance. Kind of a lead performance, not necessarily because there are many co-leads in this film, but watching them go through all this turmoil and trauma, and the fact that it's a neo-Nazi bar, so you have these people who are a little crazier than even crazy people going after these guys, hunt them down, chase them down. I don't want to get too deep into the plot because I want you guys to find that out for yourselves, but it's just such an interesting film, and it's also this like dark and icky film, but not in a bad way. You can tell the filmmaking, the craft of the filmmaking was there, but it gives you this feeling that you kind of just want to sit back and go, ugh, I feel really bad for these people. From the color correction to the cinematography, it evokes the feeling that I think the director wanted to evoke, and he does a wonderful job. This entire movie was very impressive. Once again, wasn't the best movie I saw that year. I think a lot of other critics liked it even more than I did, but I still really enjoyed it, and I still recommend it. Now this next movie is another movie. We're kind of back to the less obscure, another movie that a lot of people have watched, but there are still some that either do not know it's on Netflix or haven't seen it, and that is The Witch. So a family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. And ooh, this movie is just creepy. I think about what happened, especially towards the end, without getting too deep into anything. And my goodness, does this movie not just go completely off the rails compared to what you see in that first and maybe the first two acts? But the plot, the premise, this is the olden times. It's kind of what you expected The Village to be, the M. Night Shyamalan film, but for the entire thing. And it really does know exactly what it is. It sticks to that tone. And the pacing is something that I really think makes this movie absolutely better than it could have been. Now, I will admit, when I first watched The Witch, I wasn't super high on it. I said, this is a good horror film, but I think critics are hyping it up just a tad too much. Now, my wife would kill me if I said that because she loved this movie. This was one of her favorite films of the year. She ate it up, kind of how I ate up Hereditary, another A24 film. A24, by the way, you have to watch it for that. But how I felt about that movie, she felt about The Witch. She absolutely loved it, and I do not blame her. There are a lot of things to like, especially when you look at the filmmaking and just the way that it is put together. It is a beautiful film on a technical scale. Now, the plot is something for me. Once you get into that third act, in my opinion anyway, I did not like the end as much as I liked the beginning, but it's still a horror movie that I would recommend because it is one that is going to scare you because it's so slow and creepy, and the buildup of everything happening and the family, how they're getting ripped apart, and I love seeing all of that. Once again, I compare it to Hereditary. It's very similar, just two completely different plots and time periods. Maybe it's not that similar. Maybe I'm just crazy. But it's creepy. If you like slow-building, horrifying films, then I think you'll enjoy The Witch. If you're okay with an ending that's a bit more over the top than you anticipate it to be, then I think you'll like The Witch. Once again, I didn't love the movie, but the fact that it was so divisive to some people, I think is very intriguing, and it's one of those that I would say, go watch for yourself and make up your own mind. It's on Netflix right now. And we are back to the Netflix original movies directed by Mike Flanagan, and this is Geralds Game. So while trying to spice up their marriage in their remote lake house, Jessie must fight to survive when her husband dies unexpectedly, leaving her handcuffed to their bed frame. What a movie. What an interesting film that I had no anticipation for. So I actually watched Hush after I watched this film, so I didn't get to see Mike Flanagan develop as a director, but everything he did right in Hush, he brings to this film and executes, in my opinion, so much better. This movie has this incredible slow build-up, this build-up of emotional tension inside of someone's mind, somebody who is laying there literally, like you saw in the premise, strapped to the bed, can't go anywhere. She's freaking herself out, she's seeing things are happening in the background, and you slowly start to discover the truth about all of this, the truth about her as a person, and then what is going on currently, and everything about this movie, in my opinion, based on a Stephen King novel. So you know it's going to be creepy, and you know there are going to be elements that are not in a normal movie like this. But in my opinion, it all comes back to the performances. Bruce Greenwood is very good, but Carla Gugino, now I always feel like I say her name wrong. I don't know if it's Gugino or Gugino. I say Gugino, but who knows? But she is phenomenal in this film. She makes this movie work. If she was not good, if the main character does not work in a film like this where you spend the majority of the runtime with just her, it's literally her and a bed in a room in a house, and she's all by herself, and that's what makes this movie. If she doesn't work, then this movie doesn't work, and she is phenomenal in this film. I can't believe, once again, how overlooked her performance was in 2017 and how overlooked this movie was. When people talk about great horror films of 2017, I see this mentioned on some lists, but other lists I'm like, where is Gerald's Game? Gerald's Game was so good. It was in my top 25, top 30 of that year, and I watched over 100 movies that year. There are just so many good elements of this movie. It is not straight up horror like you would think a horror film is, but neither is any other movie on this list. What I'm talking about here is unconventional horror movies, not your typical cliched jump scares. And Gerald's Game, it has the jump scares, it has the creepy factors, and it has very petrifying imagery, but it's also a movie that does things a bit differently, and Mike Flanagan, once again, brings all of this together as a director. It's just a really good movie. And like I've been saying this whole video, it's on Netflix right now. Next up is a movie that I would say is the least noticed film on this list, and a movie that not everybody has loved that I have talked to, but one that I really enjoyed. So this is The Void. Shortly after delivering a patient to an understaffed hospital, a police officer experiences strange and violent occurrences seemingly linked to a group of mysterious hooded figures. And this movie is insane. I mean, more insane than any other movie on this list. It's a film that is very, very, very low budget, even when you're comparing it to something like Geralds Game or The Witch. This is even more low budget, and you can tell, but what they did with the practical effects, the body horror, the makeup and prosthetics, I'm not going to tell you what I'm talking about, but you can just see me doing this and imagine the creepy things that happen to people's bodies in this movie. This movie goes for it in every respect and regard possible. My goodness, The Void is so creepy. And I come to find out when I look at both directors, because it's directed by two different people, that they are both part of the art departments and makeup departments on other movies. They worked on movies like The Shape of Water and Total Recall and Father's Day. Now that is very random and they don't have a lot of directing experience, but you could tell that they brought the elements that they know what they're talented and good at to this movie. Now the story itself, it does get a little crazy at times, and a lot of people, or at least some of the reviews that I read, said it was a little too convoluted, and I can definitely see that. And I don't think this movie is fantastic. This may actually be my least favorite movie on this list, but just from a visual perspective and something that is completely different, because trust me, just from that premise, you do not know what The Void ends up being in the third act, or is going to be when you're watching this film. And I encourage you, if you want to watch an out there horror film that goes in every direction possible, starts out very simply, but then just goes for it. And I appreciate that and respect that, especially when you're looking at the horror genre and how these movies like this are taking more risks nowadays. And all of these movies that I have mentioned are more recent films, and I like that. I like where horror is at as a genre right now. That's one of the reasons I chose it to do first in this series of videos. And this movie, The Void, is on Netflix right now, if you want to go check it out. And that's it, guys. Those are 5 horror movies on Netflix right now. Maybe movies you have or haven't seen before. If you have seen all 5, let me know in the comments section down below. That's awesome and very impressive at the same time. I can't wait to see your all's responses. And one more time to run through them, the movies are The Witch, The Void, Gerald's Game, Hush, and Green Room. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. My next video will probably be the ranking of How to Train Your Dragon, the franchise, the series, just 3 movies, but I can't wait to talk about them because it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Already reviewed the 3rd movie, so that's on the channel right now. And then this weekend, as I have been pitching and promising for so long, the Flick Fan Awards. I'm in the process of editing. That is all coming together. I cannot wait to show you guys. Truly, you are the absolute best. Thursday and Friday, as always, the new movies in theaters, the new Netflix movies. I will be back very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you later.